Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time and attention this evening to hear our presentation of the results of the Ossining Downtown Mobility and Parking Management Study. We're near the end of a multi-month multi-firm effort at completing this study focused on the downtown of the village of Ossining. We started in late August. So it's not been quite a year, about 9 months, and we will try to be brief and hold some time for a discussion after we're done. What we're going to go over in this presentation is a project overview. So just a quick summary of the steps involved in the study, how we learned and discussed the conditions, the opportunities, the future of parking in downtown, and what to do about it. Summary of key findings that came out of that process, and recommendations broken down into parking and mobility strategies for improved conditions going forward. And then, like I said, I'll leave some time for discussion. So an overview of the project. We started with reviewing past studies. The village is to be commended. They've done a lot of planning work, recent, and in the last 10 years, you go back farther, there's even more work. We really focused on the last 10 years and just a lot of great work that's been done planning the downtown, including a lot of good thought and effort addressed toward achieving better parking conditions, better mobility and access. We digested those, learned what we could from them, added them to what we knew about Ossining from a visit to the downtown, a walking guided tour, walking with village staff and folks that are involved in operating and maintaining the parking downtown, and then doing some outreach via focus groups over Zoom with downtown business owners, downtown commuters, residents, community stakeholders, presenting what we had learned and having a discussion about where data meets their experience and personal perspective and their ideas and preferences for potential outcomes of the study. So that was a real great opportunity. We learned a lot talking with those folks, and then also working again with the village staff who manage the parking, establish the policies, enforce the regulations, work with the community to better understand how things are working, et cetera. So again, gaining that subjective, that user, that village staff perspective on parking that you can't learn from data alone. And then we did do a detailed set of surveys of both the parking supply and demand during weekdays, spanning a period of hours that typically represents peak parking demand conditions. So from roughly 10 a.m. through about 2 p.m., counting cars on street in the village lots across the downtown to get a sense of the balance between supply and demand. When we historically know from past studies and from working with the stakeholders, when the parking tends to be the busiest outside of events like the farmers market, but day in and day out when the parking system is under the most stress from demand. And then again, walking the study area at the beginning of the study and during these surveys, getting a sense of the mobility profile, as well as learning from past studies about regional bike connections, transit connections, and past plans and efforts that have been made toward making the downtown more accessible via modes that either make the downtown more accessible for those that don't need to drive to get there, or make it possible for folks to park in one place and walk or ride a bike or get about all of throughout the village without having to find a second parking space. Finally, we worked with the village to identify recent and pending development projects, and getting a measure of both their proposed land uses, what are these developments expected to consist of in terms of dwelling units, office spaces, retail shops and services that generate parking demand, as well as how much parking each of the projects has proposed or has provided to meet that demand that on site versus what might be a burden on the downtown parking system beyond what we see today. So that was the learning process. The next step in the study was really to start developing strategies to take what conditions we found, what we heard, what we learned, and what we anticipate going forward, and putting and identifying parking and mobility opportunities for better conditions for achieving the village's objectives. And that could include management as well as supply and capacity expansion opportunities. So we summarized those, worked with the village core study team to shape those up, to develop them, to refine them, and to take a set of those forward as final recommendations that were packaged into a final report that is complemented by an action plan and implementation guide, so that well past the timeline of this study being completed, the village will have a guide toward quick win opportunities, short-term priorities, and recommendations that may take a bit more time to develop. This will include, this does include also a performance monitoring plan to better manage the parking supply that you have today, but to also monitor conditions to see how drivers and parkers and folks walking and taking bikes and transit respond to different implementation actions. So we improve this sidewalk, are more people using it? We change the pricing between these lots, or more people starting to use the lot that was underutilized before, or things roughly the same. That is the focus of the performance monitoring plan. And this is actually the final in a set of presentations to be paired with an open house booth where we presented information at the farmers market the first Saturday in June. So a summary of key findings. One of the first things that we're eager to find out about when we start these kinds of studies is what is the real balance of demand versus the supply of available parking that is available to the downtown businesses, commuters, employees, visitors, etc. And what does that look like? How full are they across the whole system at these peak times? So again, we did count at 9, 10, 11 a.m. and again at noon and 1 p.m. across the downtown. And this is just a summary of overall the roughly 500 plus parking spaces on street were less than half full until 11 a.m. and then just really never reached 60% full throughout the day. Off street started off in the morning at about 2/3 full. It really didn't go that much higher again across the whole off street system, which is primarily a set of Village of Ossining municipal lots that provide both visitor and commuter parking. So as you can see, at the peak of the peak, about 3/4 full, with 80 plus spaces still available. And averaging them out again, really peaking at about 2/3 full across the on-street and off-street system. So certainly not at capacity, but what really tells the story is focusing on the core of the core, and this was really the subset of the parking supply that really brought the most demand relative to the available supply. Lots 5, 6, 7, and 8. These are the lots that are best known to both employees and visitors and residents, people that are familiar with the downtown. And as you can see, these peaked much higher than the overall average. So again, if people are coming to the downtown and looking for parking only within these 4 lots, that is where you get the perception that maybe it feels like there's nowhere to park when you go downtown, or it's very tight. Now, the first means that we use to check the reality of what we're seeing in 2020, these counts were done in September. When the impacts of COVID were somewhat less than they certainly had been at the beginning, and better than they would be in the next coming months. A lot of the businesses were open. But we did want to check first by looking back to the set of counts in these same lots that were conducted in 2013. And as you can see, there's actually much more activity and demand represented in the counts that we took in 2020. So, there may have been some decline in demand relative to 2019, but certainly historically, this is a strong set of demand within these downtown core lots. But one of the things that really helps tell the story better about what people experience when they come downtown are maps like this that track utilization conditions within individual lots and on individual on-street blocks. This color key should be fairly easy to follow. It's similar to the traffic lights. The red lots are basically at capacity. They feel full or are full. The yellow lots are getting there. They're 10–15% availability, but mostly full. And then green is kind of a sweet spot. It's well utilized, but there's plenty of parking still available for the next car that shows up. And really blue represents underutilized conditions. This is an asset that you have that's not attracting demand, more than really 2/3 of its capacity. Now, again, we wanted to take another attempt at adjusting for potential decline in demand from COVID. So what we did was we looked at, we worked with a vendor of cell phone data and simply got data that represented cell phone ping activity. So anytime a cell phone communicates with a tower or a Wi-Fi network, creates a ping. Lots of vendors collect this data, and what they can do is provide you a snapshot of what on any given day in 2018, 2019, and 2020, the number of pings within a certain area. So we focused on the downtown and comparing what we found in September 2020 in terms of cell phone activity, it was a little lower than 2019 and 2018. So we took that gap and adjusted upwards our parking counts from 2020. So as you can see, if things maybe had been a bit more robust, if we were right that the cell phone activity suggested that in September of 2020, downtown Austin might have been a bit busier than it was at the time because of COVID. You still have these patterns of constrained lots, but availability. This is, I didn't say this before, this map is from 12 noon, and this is from 1 p.m. the same day. So, plenty of availability in lot 7, but pretty constrained in at least half of lot 8, and 5 and 6 are quite full at both of these times. And so really it suggests an opportunity to maybe shift some of the demand to these other locations. And that's what comes down to management. Not saying that some capacity expansion opportunities might not be worth pursuing. So some of the other things that we learned, experiential insights from our stakeholders, from those focus groups. One of the things that we heard consistently was that a lot of visitors don't know what their parking options are. That, a lot of them don't plan for their trip to downtown. They arrive and they are looking around for parking. And there's not a lot of wayfinding, and certainly not a lot of wayfinding that has the visitor in mind in terms of how it's communicating where the parking options are. Many municipal lots that are available for visitor parking are not easy to find just looking around, and the sort of winding and sloping roadway network of the downtown creates its own challenges for looking for parking lots that may be behind your destination on Main Street or Spring. We also learned that many visitors and downtown business owners and employees would be willing to pay to park. A lot of visitors do end up paying to park on street as a result, because even the ones that can see lot 5, they see the permit sign, they don't understand, they don't know if they can park there or not. They park on the street and pay when they might park in the lot instead if they knew where those were and knew that they were free. Some employees definitely indicated that they were willing to pay more for parking if it were more convenient. Particularly, we heard a lot about I can get a very convenient space in the morning, but if I go somewhere for lunch, when I come back, that lot is full. And certainly we heard a lot of employees complaining that they didn't understand why the village made them move their car every 3 hours within the visitor spaces, not understanding that they really, those spaces are meant for visitors and not for folks that will be in the downtown all day long. And that's really where those are the vehicles that we hope would use the permit spaces. Another opportunity that we spent a good deal of time working through, trying to find some opportunity to address hardship parking constraints where certain blocks of the village, there are, the houses that don't have any or enough parking in their driveway in their garage to meet the needs of the residents. When that is common enough on any given block, there may actually be more vehicles with a hardship permit than there is capacity. And again, hearing from folks that say, if they show up past 6 p.m., 7 p.m., they can't get a space. And so looking at the possibility of using technology such as license plate reader to change the way that hardship permits are provided and managed to be a bit more flexible and encourage sort of more flexible use of those permits rather than once you have a hardship permit, park on the street every night. So in terms of recommendations, we'll start with parking supply opportunities. This is an area redeveloping the village lots, particularly lots 5 and 6 in the downtown core, really ticks a lot of boxes in terms of objectives for the future of downtown Ossining. Particularly, this side of Main Street is all parking, whereas this side of Main Street is sort of what draws people to downtown. It's that historic look of walkable shops and services, a great place to stroll. And so the opportunity to recreate that on this side of Main Street has been a part of the vision for, can we redevelop those lots? And often part of that has been, well, what do we do with the parking that is displaced by the development? And often the focus has been on, well, can we replace it on the site? As one project, lot 5, it's got new buildings, it's got replacement parking, and often it just doesn't pencil out. So one of the things that we talked about was separating the lots with high development value, which include these two, but also lot 8 and potentially lot 15, just because it's right on Spring Street, not far from the heart of downtown, from the lots that have high potential for structured parking, which are really only lots 7 and 8. The grade benefit of those, where it's a bit sloping, you could build a multi-level garage that from Main Street would fit the scale of the downtown, whereas that would be very difficult to do over here. So separating those out and thinking about opportunities to pursue both a development that could be light on parking, certainly on replacement parking, maybe only parking to meet the needs of the development, if that, on these lots, while replacing the parking in a different location. And we've identified some objectives for how you would pursue that. But that's really a strategic opportunity to be further explored. Complementary strategy in terms of developing parking supply. One of the things that is very common in the village is for developments to either provide less parking than is strictly identified as a requirement in the zoning code, or getting a variance to waive all of the requirements because it's an infill project that just doesn't work with parking. It's a small site, whatever the situation is. Many places have, instead of just providing a waiver or variance, developed a fee in lieu of parking. And so the village still gets the development that it wants, but instead of getting no return to help it manage the demand that the development will create, it gets a fee that is captured in a fund that is dedicated for developing more parking or developing programs to reduce downtown parking demand, such as increased mobility. That can be done very well, and we outlined some case studies about how that can be approached very strategically. Another opportunity to create more parking. It's parking that exists, but right now these spaces are 2-hour limits. Very underutilized and very convenient as employee parking. So piloting a conversion to 8-hour spaces to provide more and more convenient parking spaces for some employees might reduce some of the impact from employee parking demand in, say, lot 5, freeing up more spaces for visitors. Using pay-by-phone technology. So the village does have a pay-by-phone vendor system set up where you can pay at a meter with a pay-by-phone service once you set it up. Is very convenient. And one of the things we found in study after study, the amount of parking that people actually have to pay for at a meter, it's often not the amount that they're asked to pay, it's the inconvenience of having the quarters. Adding the pay by phone option, you can still pay with quarters at the meter, but now you can pay by phone as well for those that really value that convenience. And we've done studies where people will actually pay twice as much just by hitting the maximum time button. They're not even being forced to pay twice as much, they just do, because when you make it super convenient, $2 versus $3 for the best parking in downtown is not that big of a difference. And again, this is adding on to the options that are already there. One of the things you can do with that once you have that established, though, is take private lots that are empty evenings and weekends. They can work with the pay-by-phone vendor, identify a lot number that can be put on a sign at the lot, identify hours when the public can use those spaces and how much they must pay to do so. And that becomes a revenue source for that lot. And in those evenings and weekends and maybe during events, that can significantly expand the downtown parking supply at exactly the time when it may be needed most. Another option some cities have explored is creating virtual permits for those same lots. So again, if you have an evening business, you want safe, secure parking for your employees that's not on the street and not in visitor lots, you can create a permit system with a business using the pay-by-phone service. One of the things we heard from the very beginning was concerns about the pickup drop-off traffic on Main Street that has been generated by Opendoor. Opendoor has been a great success for the downtown. It's brought a lot of activity, but it is a business with a high volume of pickup drop-off activity at its front door. And so really exploring opportunities to better accommodate that activity in a way that doesn't affect through traffic on the downtown's Main Street. And opportunities to expand resident and employee parking options, again, working with private lot owners to explore virtual permit options, and also exploring options to convert one or more rail commuter lots to municipal parking lots, particularly where those lots are in areas where there is a lot of hardship parking permit need. If there are commuter rail lots that are not being well utilized, that may be an opportunity to convert that to a municipal parking lot that residents can purchase overnight permits for. Now, again, going back to the maps that we showed where utilization patterns were very clear, 5, 6, and 8 are the premium lots that they fill up the fastest, they stay full the longest. They're the lots that are the quickest, people are quickest to get familiar with. And so one of the things we want the village to explore is creating a discount permit. So not making 5, 6, and 8 more expensive, but creating a permit that's cheaper than today's monthly permit for daytime parking at the other lots. So that today, if I park in lots 5, 6, or 8, I can continue to do so and there's no added cost. But I can also choose to reduce my cost every month and use lot 7. A little less convenient, maybe more availability, save some money. And again, the performance monitoring program, we suggest, this isn't a one-time change. You make the change and you see if the utilization patterns respond to that change. And then you go from there. Similarly, in those same lots, 5, 6, and 8, converting the 3-hour parking spaces to metered spaces, because those are, again, the visitor spaces that should be a great opportunity, easy to find, but they are the quickest to fill up and stay full the longest. With the other spaces remaining free, that creates an incentive again to use lots such as lot 7. Similarly, cost tiers for metered parking. So a very simple system is creating a premium tier or premium zone that would basically be Main Street and Spring Street to incentivize more people to use side streets and secondary roads where there is metered parking. Right now, there's really no reason for most people to look for that parking. The tendency when everything is the same price is for drivers to rush into the center of downtown and then start looking for parking. And that's why it can be very frustrating to find parking on the primary commercial streets in any downtown. And then, really defining this approach as how the village sets its rates for parking. And it's not about revenue. The RFP said nothing about we need to make more money. Our job isn't to make, create ways for cities to make more money. It's really about managing a limited resource. And it's just like any other commodity. If there's more demand than there is supply, the best way to make sure that there's some available for everybody is to use price, try to be as fair as possible. But without that cost incentive for people to think about their second or third favorite option, again, everyone's going to create an excess of demand for the best parking options. And those will never, those will be always very frustrating when you're trying to find available spaces in the downtown. And again, it creates a perception that there's nowhere to park, even though we know from the data that there really is. Cost savings. So again, revisiting the hardship parking opportunity. Again, the idea isn't making the hardship permit more expensive, but breaking down the increment of the payment. So instead of paying every year, using license plate recognition to transition to virtual hardship permits. So my license plate is my permit, and every time I park on the street overnight, I only pay for that night. If I park at my house or somewhere else 3 nights out of the week, I save money because I'm not charged for the parking. So it would take the annual cost that you have today and prorate it to a daily charge. And that gives an incentive for folks that don't need it every day, or they could get a hardship permit for every car in their household, but maybe they'll only get get it for some and park off street. And again, it's a cost savings opportunity that may relieve pressure on some of those blocks where we're hearing a lot of frustration from folks that really need it every night. A very simple thing, but one of the things we recommend almost uniformly these days, especially as downtown economies shift from purely lunchtime crowd lunchtime and weekends economy to an evening-based economy. Most downtowns are moving toward food, ice cream, drinks, gathering spots, farmers markets. Those are the times when you're getting the most demand from visitors. And if you're not using that tool of pricing at those times, which Ossining is very typical of most cities where they've set the enforcement schedule based on the workday, 8 to 6, 9 to 5, rather than what they're seeing in terms of patterns of demand these days. And so getting comfortable with breaking out of that workday schedule and making sure that pricing is there as your restaurants continue to recover from COVID, and you'll start to see more consistent evening peaks. So pricing on street at least till 8 p.m. we think is really important, and enforcing Monday through Saturday, again, to support those businesses with available convenient parking. Revisiting the zoning code again, one of the things that we're recommending is an opportunity. We've talked about an in lieu fee. Another opportunity to get something in return for agreeing to reduce parking at some of these projects is to reduce the parking for projects where they propose to, say, provide very convenient bike parking for residents, like a really nice bike locker system with maybe a repair station or a wash station, or they're providing a shuttle to the rail station to reduce the need to own a vehicle among its residents. Something, and there's a whole suite of mobility strategies that's very common in these types of zoning code approaches, basically showing a meaningful effort that we are trying to attract residents that own fewer vehicles than is typical. And that's why we feel that we don't need as much parking as a project that wasn't doing those things. So putting that in your zoning code, being clear with developers, this is what we would like to see. And if we do see it, we will reduce your parking requirements accordingly. The village has already transitioned to virtual permits for commuter permits, just using LPR, license plate recognition technology. Again, it's a virtual permit, your license plate becomes your permit. It's tracked through a database of registered vehicles. Transitioning all permits that the village issues, I mentioned the hardship permit, to virtual just creates a better system where things can be tracked more accurately. Also creates a nimble system where you can change which permit you have, on your phone, on the website, at your home, at your convenience. So it just becomes a much more flexible management system. And one of the things that we identified as a shorter or longer term strategy is you can, once you establish license plate recognition as your permit, as your tool to make the shift to virtual permits, those data pings from the license plate recognition system become a set of data that can be used to track utilization. So instead of doing field counts at 9, 10, 11, through the afternoon, like we did last September, every day you can be getting a feed of data from your license plate readers that can be translated into data that shows you roughly how full your lots are, how full your on-street parking is at any given time, as long as you're at any given time when you're enforcing parking regulations. Improving parking wayfinding. This again was something that we heard from a lot of stakeholders, businesses. Visitors show up, they don't know where their parking options are, or they see them, they don't really understand them. Is that really for me, or is that a permit lot? We identified a suite of recommendations to really cater the wayfinding that you have and expand it to focus on that visitor experience of arriving in downtown and quickly being able to find your way to your best fit parking option. This includes directional signage that we've identified in this map where those signs should go so that people know or anticipate where the lot is before they pass it up. But also, designing the signage in ways that quickly create comfort that among visitors that they've found the parking option for them when they have. One of the things that we worked with the village staff was some frustration around snow clearance, and that on days when there's a lot of snow, either the vehicles can't get through to clear the streets, or emergency vehicles can't get through because they haven't been cleared. One of the best practices that we put forward as a recommendation was very simple: from November through May, during the daytime, restrict parking to alternate sides of the street. That makes it a very predictable environment and creates a clear path for the snow clearance vehicles and emergency vehicles to get through. Mobility strategies, very related to the parking, but a bit more of a specific focus on how people get to the downtown and how they get around. So focusing, one of the first places we like to go is, again, promoting park once opportunities. So the downtown is an area that I think most visitors drive to, unless you're a resident within walking distance, or are hardy hiker, or someone coming either up from the rail station or from the trail. Most visitors arrive by car. So making sure that once they're downtown, they have a comfortable parking option from which they can get anywhere that they plan to visit in the downtown. And a big part of this is, directing visitors toward those lots that are suitable for Park Once, and creating consistent pedestrian wayfinding so they know where they are. Often, if you're in lot 8 or lot 7, you're really a lot closer to Main Street destinations than it may appear once you pop out of your car. A little bit of wayfinding can direct you to the most direct path to your destination. And complementing that with making sure that walking facilities are of the highest quality, ADA accessible, and are visible, and using things like traffic calming features to make sure that those sidewalks and walking facilities are comfortable and safe. Similarly, we sense a lot of opportunities to build upon the positioning of downtown Ossining as a destination for cyclists, either on the traveling on the trail that goes right through the downtown, or Metro North does a lot of promotions for people coming up from the city on their bikes to explore these areas. Ossining's a great stop along the way for wherever these cyclists may be going. It's a great way station, great restaurants, great place to stop over. And promoting that and making sure people know that this is a bike-friendly town. There'll be plenty of options for you to secure your bike while you visit the downtown. And relatedly, really leaning into those synergies with the old Aqueduct Trail, making clear where the connections are, mapping them, signing them, making them ADA compliant. And during farmers markets and other events, providing things that can be kind of a combination of parking management and celebration. Bike valet services. This is often something that's run by an advocacy group or say a bike sales and repair shop, where you have a staffed booth, you drop off your bike, a small fee or donation, they hold it in a secure location. This way you can have mass orderly bike parking to really encourage people to come to these events on their bikes. They show up, it's convenient, and they're right at the heart of the farmers market without having to deal with vehicle parking. A whole set of opportunities we've identified for expanding and improving walking and cycling networks that in the report are identified in this map, with some specifics about what we saw as the opportunity to make these conditions a bit better. Real focus on crossing streets, safe waiting to cross, shorter distances to cross, and where bike parking investments and installations might be most effective. Finally, one of the things that we've been talking about from the beginning, but it is a distinct challenge. There's a lot of parking down by the waterfront that tends to sit empty evenings and weekends that could be useful to the downtown. But it's a long walk. It's a steep walk. So we did look at connections between the two districts. There has been some movement on providing some shuttle services. We put some thought to how that might be leveraged to the benefit of the downtown. There's definitely interest in electric scooters and the potential for e-bikes as a maybe even more comfortable solution for navigating that roughly mile trip that has a lot of grade to it. For residents, so that they don't have to own cars at quite the same rate if they have an easy, convenient way to get back and forth to the rail station, but also bringing people up that may have traveled up by train, so they choose to do that instead of drive. So definitely some opportunities there, and we've identified some things that we think are worth exploring. Definitely in the category of low-hanging fruit. In terms of supporting downtown employees, 511 New York Rideshare provides a lot of services, including ride matching platforms, so that if you work in downtown Ossining and there are others that do as well, you can quickly and easily find a rideshare partner, split the cost of parking, split the cost of gas, etc. And not just making people aware of this service, but engaging employers about how this is a real benefit. I think often employers overlook the folks that work for them, that maintaining 2 or 3 vehicles at home may be a real burden, and providing information on opportunities such as ride sharing and guaranteed ride home may allow them to get by with one less car, which can be a huge deal, and make it easier for them to retain that employment in downtown Ossining. And that is the extent of my presentation. I will stick around if anyone wants to ask questions about any of the findings related to parking, findings related to mobility, or any of the recommended strategies that I've gone over tonight. And thank you very much.
If anyone does have a question or a comment, we just ask that you raise your hand, which can be found in a variety of places on your screen. So we'll give it just a couple of seconds to make sure that, in fact, nobody has any questions or comments for Thomas. Oh, I see a hand. Ginny, I am going to promote you to a panelist. So when I move you over, if you want to turn on your camera and unmute, hold on just 1 second. Okay, Ginny, you are in. If you want to unmute and then potentially turn on your camera, we'd love to hear from you.
Let's see. Okay, I apologize. I'm actually driving, so I'm going to not go to camera because I've been listening in. But my question is related to, so I apologize for that. My question is related to the monitoring and the collection of plate data. And I mean, people drive downtown, so obviously their plates are always visible. I'm just wondering if you've ever encountered resistance about, people being concerned about the data being collected in that way.
Yes, absolutely. And that's a really good question. We have researched this for areas. In fact, we did a study in Vermont where I think like the month before we did a study, the state passed a law that was really aimed at sort of like extreme protection of privacy and really restricted the use of license plate recognition technology in parking enforcement. And what we found when we researched was that you can automate sort of processes that protect the identity of the plates. So first of all, if you buy a permit, you're in the system, or if you register for the pay by phone systems are always pay by plate. So those, they will have your plate data, but just in terms of the readers, if there is no violation, the data is immediately destroyed. It's not kept in a database. And the vendor can provide information on how that is done. And then even when there is a violation, there's a process by which that data is wiped out once the citation is resolved. I'm going by memory, but there's definitely ways that you can reassure the public that this isn't about tracking people's movements, and that the data is very limited beyond what's needed for the enforcement.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. That's a good question.
Great presentation, thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ginny.
Drive
I'm going
safe.
to move you back over as an attendee.
Great, thanks.
I don't see any other hands. We'll give another couple of seconds just in case anyone has any more questions, comments, anything that they'd like to share about the presentation this evening. Okay, seeing none, Thomas, I think we can wrap up.
Thank you very much. For some reason, I feel like going out and getting corn dogs and funnel cakes.
That does look
see if I have any
pretty
luck with
excellent.
that. Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thanks everybody for joining. Have a good night.